This Honorable House now resumes its sitting. Honorable members, we continue with the debate on the Integrity in Public Life Act 2021. And please be mindful that we will be recessing this House at 9 p.m. sharp. The floor is now open for contributions. It appears that no one else wished to speak. So I will take a 1-minute recess to find the mover of the motion for him to wrap up. If I don't find him, I'll ask the Deputy Premier to wrap up. Okay, I recognize the Territorial Member and Deputy Speaker, the Honorable Neville A. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this bill. And while doing so, Mr. Speaker, I also listened to Honorable Fraser made some statements, which I too would like to lend my support and agreement with what he said, a lot of what he said. This is a very important bill. I see it fit that we could go into committee stage, sit down and really go through this bill. There's a lot of things that we could adjust, but not passing this bill, I think, is not an option. Because there's a saying that the Premier always use. If we don't, I forget what it is now, but I know if we don't do ourselves by manage ourselves, somebody will do it for us. But Mr. Speaker, one of the things that trouble me is that when we come to this honorable house and we have bills to pass such as this, and we come off the way where we try to criticize each other. And I find that at times we could come here in this house and disagree to agree, but not we start throwing shade on others. The bill need to be looked at. We could go on committee stage and make the adjustments. We don't have to come here and make it sound as if we are passing a bill because we have something to hide. Because that's the way it's coming off. One of the things that bother me or worry me is that we're being lumped in, the government officials are being lumped in with the civil servants. Whereas we as political figures, we have protection in a way, and they don't. So to lump us all in the same boat is kind of unfair to some of the civil servants. So that's something we have to look at, because we could come to this honorable house and say anything, and we might be prosecuted for it. Whereas others could say something and they could be held accountable. But Mr. Speaker, also one of the things I am concerned about, again, is what is you have people saying wrong things and they getting out there, slandering others. And it's something that we really have to look at very closely. It's not something that should be going on and continue to happen, because a person's name is all they have. And when you become a politician, I'll put it that way, or a leader, somebody who represents, it seems as if you're under more scrutiny than anything else, Mr. Speaker. It comes to the point where it is, whatever you do in your personal life is public. And that's what it is. It's a public figure. But you as a politician, being there and being scrutinized for things that you know you're not doing, you cannot do nothing about it, is also another problem. And that's why the law is put in a way, we're trying to do this bill in a way that everybody is being held accountable for whatever they say. And I think everybody to be held accountable for whatever they say, if it's not the truth. Some of the things I see in the bill that is really kind of appalling to me is, one, that you could go and search somebody's house, and because again, the same power of a police officer, and that is kind of scary, but we just have to turn around and fix it in a way that it is proper. There's nothing wrong with us putting things in place to show that we are held accountable. There's nothing wrong with us putting things in place that other people are held accountable. We just have to sit down and work out all the little different things that are in there. We cannot continue coming to this house, make it sound as if like because this is not a rush bill, Mr. Speaker. This bill was first presented the 22nd of April 2021. So there's no rush in the bill. And the thing about it, I think everybody had an option or had a chance to make notes and maybe even send to the Premier, because I did it. I took the bill and I made some notes and I do some amendments and I sent what I thought. And I'm sure other people did the same. So to say that it's being rushed and it was just brought here and because of Christmas Day and rushing, no, we can't. Let's don't go down that road. Let's come here and sit down and try to fix it. That's why we have committee stage, to go in and make changes. We cannot continue to come here grandstanding, like it's photo op time. We cannot. We went through a COI. Yes, we did. You tell me we didn't learn nothing from the COI? We did learn a lot from the COI. We know we are putting things in place, and now it sounds like as if we're doing it to protect something. Yes, we're doing it to protect something. We're doing something to protect us. We have to be accountable for whatever we do. And by us doing what we're doing now, I think it shows the faith that this government will put things in place so that we be held accountable. What is wrong with that? I'm really appealing to what's going on, because what is wrong with us bringing this bill? Why every time we bring a bill, it sounds as if we're only doing it for a show? A lot of these bills that we brought here is bills that were out there for a long time and nobody don't want to bring them here. Every time we try to do something to make it right, it's a problem. Half of the time when we come to do bills here, and you're looking for the opposition, they go home in committee stage. And like I say, actually it's true. Most times whenever we do a bill here, when everybody make a comment, when time comes to committee, half of them cannot be found. Most time the honorable opposition leader is there, but the majority of the opposition is not there. And I'm afraid to say because the truth. So if you go and check, you'll see it there. And that's when the bills are really being vented. At the committee stage, the most important part of the bill is then, when we make amendments and changes. So if you're not there, how can you contribute? You contributing now is just for the media? That's a question I'm asking. Because when we reach in committee stage, where are you? Mr. Speaker, if we are serious about this country, these are the kind of bills that we have to pass to show that we have integrity and we want to be accountable. And this thing about corruption, I don't want to hear the word corruption in the debate anymore. We are not corrupt. And every time you hear somebody talk about corruption, the be very corrupt, we are not corrupt. We have to make sure that we put bills in place that really will stand out to hold us accountable. But to say that we are corrupt, that's a strong word, Mr. Speaker, to use. Corruption is a very serious allegation. And if you have no evidence of us being corrupt, can't we keep saying we corrupt? Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to be long. I just want to support the bill. And when we go into committee stage, like I said, a lot of what Honorable Fraser said makes a lot of sense. And I support what he said, and I also support what the Deputy Premier said as well. I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
I thank the Honorable Territorial Member and Deputy Speaker for his contribution. The floor is still open. And honorable members, let me just say that some members have indicated to me that they wish to speak tomorrow. Unfortunately, because we're going to 9 o'clock tonight, so those who wanted to speak tomorrow, if you want to consider speaking now, because if I keep calling on members to speak and there's no speakers, I will call on the Deputy Premier to wrap up the debate. So the floor is now open. I recognize the Minister for Transportation, Works and Utilities and member for the 5th District, the Honorable Kai M. Reimer.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to lend my voice to this debate in full support of this bill. Though a lot has been said already pertaining to this bill, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to basically start off in a little historical sense because I know it's being said that, this is being rushed. So, Mr. Speaker, if we do the research, we'll know that this was tried to be introduced to a territory from in the 90s based on research. So, Mr. Speaker, this is something that has been long in coming, just like many other bills that we have brought to this House during our tenure, and we have worked diligently to bring it forth so that we can add to these legislations for records. And Mr. Speaker, I also need to make mention that it was, I think we started the public consultation sometime earlier this year. I think it was May of this year, Mr. Speaker, where we reached out to the public. I think the first meeting was held at Althea Scatliff Primary School, and we had meetings throughout the territory, online, public eye. So this is no bill that is just being forced down because of holidays or as some may have insinuated. But Mr. Speaker, this is something that we have practiced within this government so that we can, have proper dialogue and with these legislation that we are bringing forth to the public. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure if members who spoke regarding the timing of this bill is properly aware or have been paying attention, but these are bills that we have brought forth and have done public consultation. I think it was the Deputy Premier who just mentioned that, this government, we have done more public consultation than any other administration, and that is definitely something to be proud about because we definitely try to incorporate the public into all these bills that we bring to this honorable House. So, Mr. Speaker, this bill, integrity in public life. And Mr. Speaker, I must mention that after, doing some research, you notice that, and it's nothing to be proud about, we are way behind other territories within the Caribbean in terms of integrity in public life. So we're here now debating, and I too have some issues in terms of what is entailed in the bill, and we definitely, when we go through the committee stages, we'll definitely do some amendment there. But Mr. Speaker, we have other territories that have introduced integrity bill for quite some time. So this is nothing where we should be celebrated that we are bringing this forth, because as a territory, and if we want to go forward, we talk about self-determination and where we want to go. These are things in terms of where we should, as a premier usually say, we must try to protect or police ourselves before someone else polices us. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy that this bill is here with us today. Though long in coming, it is here. Nothing happens before time, and we understand what we are going through with this COVID, this pandemic. Because I know when this came to cabinet first, this was way before the Commission of Inquiry took place. And we had discussion. You'll see if if you do some research, you'll see the chronological um, what took place in terms of this bill, from when it started, when it got to exco track. I think it was actually in 2019 that this bill was loaded first for cabinet, and it went back and we reworked it, and we're now here again. Well, Mr. Speaker, for this debate, integrity, that's a we understand that the legislation is hefty. Though it's not a big bill, it includes quite a lot that we need to decipher and we need to swallow a lot of. And Mr. Speaker, I know during the committee stage we'll take our time and go through clause by clause, because this is quite an important bill, Mr. Speaker. And I mentioned integrity, and Mr. Speaker, I know that word, it has quite a few meanings to it. Um, we have, and for the purpose of this debate, Mr. Speaker, integrity, it can basically be defined as the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. And Mr. Speaker, that's the premise of this integrity bill. And Mr. Speaker, that definition alone, you can see the relevance and how timely this bill is for us as a territory. Commission of Inquiry has been spoken of quite a bit earlier, but Mr. Speaker, this has been touted as we campaign these good governance legislation, what we'll put in place for transparency and good governance. Mr. Speaker, this is just an additional one of those legislation that would be added when you speak about the Contractor General and all the other bills that we've passed. Well, Mr. Speaker, this one is timely, and I listened to the senior member, and I listened to the member for the second speak about their perspective of the bill, and rightfully so. That is why we're here to debate and speak on issues that we see or we find that would be relevant and that needs addressing. And Mr. Speaker, as even as this went through public consultation, I know persons had issues with it, and the bill, I'm sure when we get to that stage, the committee stage, you would see a lot of red highlights in the bill, because there are and there will be amendments to this bill when it gets to that stage. Mr. Speaker, though, everything, there's room for improvement. Just yesterday, just the other day, we worked on the BOSS bill, and Mr. Speaker, that is something that has been amended quite a few times. So it's nothing where this will be in set in stones, and we won't be able to touch it. Mr. Speaker, where we find issues, we will address it. But rightfully so, I support bringing this bill and having this debate for this bill here today. Mr. Speaker, the Integrity in Public Life Act, it will continue to strengthen the government's day-to-day operation from an ethical standpoint. And anything, like I mentioned, can be improved upon. And I know this act would strengthen the institution that have been guiding many, and all the government agencies, statutory, whether corporate agencies and or central government. And it's a vital and a critical bill, so that it hold the principles of accountability and I mentioned transparency closely, Mr. Speaker, because I believe this act will add value to what we have on the books already, what we've passed in this house before, and this would just be tying it into all the good governance legislation. Mr. Speaker, this I think would be aligned to what we've been speaking about for quite some time. And Mr. Speaker, even as we speak about integrity, I've been a public officer, and I know how important your integrity is. And Mr. Speaker, I just want to refer to a quick story that I had while I worked at the government. I worked at the DMV, and I remember I just feel compelled to say this. It falls in line with integrity. I remember when I started, there was a thought, or it was going around that persons were selling stickers for the vehicles. And I remember one time this guy came to me and said he'll pay me about $300 for a sticker for his vehicle. And I said to the gentleman, I said, have you thought about going to the insurance agency and see what it'll cost just to get insurance for the vehicle? I said that for that car, you would probably pay $240 for a year or something to that effect. And just to license the car would be $50. I said the same $300 that you're offering me right now, just go do the right thing. And Mr. Speaker, something as simple as that. Persons probably thought it would be easier to just pay somebody just to get something legally. And Mr. Speaker, the integrity of that, after that, I could have reported the gentleman to the police, but he came, he apologized, and actually did the right thing. And Mr. Speaker, I know there are many public officers that fall into these situations, and we have one of the best public service in the territory. And Mr. Speaker, I know that with the addition of these legislation and where you would have good governance and these legislation that would guide them, because I know some may fall into those traps. So Speaker, I just needed to make mention of that you know this legislation coming forth is not because there are corruption or persons have corrupt degree or face with or accept that. It's just because we have a first class public service, and I can say that because I was a part of it. But Mr. Speaker, these legislation are just there to govern and for good governance as we work to police ourselves. And I think it's fitting for us to applaud those officers, the men and women who make it their business day in and day in and day out, Mr. Speaker, to get the government's work done with integrity and get it done in a manner where there's not deemed to be corrupt. And Mr. Speaker, I'm having feedback. I'm not sure if anyone else is hearing it.
Sorry, what was getting feedback?
It's cleared up now, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. We're hearing you loud and clear here,
Okay, sorry.
Honorable Minister.
And Mr. Speaker, I too I'm happy that this government, we have introduced the the compensation and the job classification. That project that would benefit a lot of the public officers who at some time feel that they're not properly compensated. But Mr. Speaker, we this government, we thought it was necessary to bring that and align those officers who go above and beyond, that they be paid and be rewarded for the work that they do. Mr. Speaker, we know that the public service, sometimes they're faced with scrutiny, but they're one of the main. This is one of the main pillars, Mr. Speaker, and it's imperative that we are held to a high standard, so that, Mr. Speaker, the rest of the territory, they can emulate and or work to emulate what we have done as public officers. Mr. Speaker, in the act, it speaks to, like I mentioned, the powers of corruption and the powers of the commission, and it takes a precise look at each of these areas, Mr. Speaker, and how they're to be assessed once the commission is implemented. In the in the in the act, Mr. Speaker, permit me as my computer is messing up someone. But Mr. Speaker, I go back because I go back to the public service, because I know when I served there, we were guided by the the general orders, and I think it was in 1971 that the general orders came into play and revised then in 1982. And Mr. Speaker, my recommendation would be for the general orders to also be revised so that it could, fall in line with what this Integrity in Public Life Act would would would, would entail, and so that it could also strengthen and complement, so that it would work in tandem. Mr. Speaker, that general orders, we know it guides us as it guides public officers, and most definitely need to be brought to um, need to definitely be updated. I know that it was being worked on, but I think it needs to come forth, and so that public officers, can be guided and be up to date with what the general orders speak to. And I also think that it should be amended ever so often, every 5 years, or because time changes, Mr. Speaker. We reflect on what is happening locally, what is happening globally, and we probably need to practice what is happening, and not be with this antiquated law that, when you have an issue, then you're not sure where you revert to, because when we pass these laws, and a public officer then needs to be disciplined or needs to be guided, the general orders is definitely outdated. But Mr. Speaker, I think this integrity also they all need to complement even a register of interest, because now public officers would need to declare, and that register of interest act definitely needs to now be updated and amended, so that public officers and all officers would be able to would then declare their interest, and I guess the commissioner would definitely would need to have access to that. And I know when the commission of inquiry was launched, we did the amendment so that they can have access to the register of interest. So I think all that needs to happen and take place, Mr. Speaker. But as members mentioned, this would need to be properly ventilated, piece by piece, um, not infringe on any other commission or any other entity. because I know there are areas in this legislation, Mr. Speaker, where the commission have powers to do certain things, and we must be mindful. We must be mindful of what those powers are given to the commission, and it doesn't infringe on, say, the judiciary in terms of investigations and so forth. Well, Mr. Speaker, I stand in full support of this legislation, and as we go through the committee stage, I will definitely pay much attention, and I hope all members will also be involved so that their issues would be voiced, their concerns will be heard, and we'll definitely make amendment. This is nothing where anything is being forced on the general public. We are the legislators, and we'll definitely work to make sure that it is proper legislation, and the public would definitely be the beneficiary of it. This integrity in public life. So, Mr. Speaker, my short contribution, I just want to say I'm in full support of this legislation, and I appreciate the ability to say a few words on this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I thank the honorable member for the 5th district for his contribution. Members, if there's any person who wants to speak short for 30 minutes, we do have a 30 minutes window. If not, then we will recess until tomorrow at 10. Is there any member wishing to speak for 30 minutes? Okay, hearing none. Honorable members, we will recess until tomorrow at 10. We'll be back online. I'm going to ask and appeal humbly but politely to members to let's strive for an on-time start tomorrow. Obviously, in the committee, members have expressed already, those who have spoken, about the changes that we want to make in the bill in committee stage means that we will have a protracted and a long and intensive committee process. So it's important in terms of time saving that we start on time tomorrow, and hopefully we will not have to go on till Wednesday because it's getting very close to the holidays, and I recognize that while your first call is the House of Assembly, that each member have families and friends that they and constituents that they may want to see and also do stuff with. So with that said, the Honorable House is now adjourned until tomorrow, Tuesday, December 21st at 10 a.m. and will continue online. House is in recess.